When she saw their expressions, Baoer's eyes narrowed, and she said, "What? Do all of you intend to not give it to me because I look young?" Jiang Choshui's eyelids twitched, and his eyes flickered as he looked at Baoer. After that, he revealed a smile and said, "How could we do that? Even you're aware that we don't have so many energy stones with us now. Why don't you come with us to go take it? What do you think?" When they heard this, the others behind Jiang Choshui exchanged glances, and a wisp of a ghastly and cold glow flashed within their eyes. After that, all the others nodded lightly and displayed that they agreed with Jiang Choshui. At this point, they were unable to produce the energy stones no matter what, and they wouldn't hand it over even if they could. Since they were unable to produce the energy stones, then there was only a single method, and it was to eliminate this little girl before them. Even though they knew this little girl's identity wasn't ordinary, they didn't have another choice, because even the outer court elders were unable to produce over 10,000 energy stones. This time, all of their thoughts had converged together in an extremely tacit manner. When she heard Jiang Choshui, Baoer glanced at all the other outer court disciples, and when she saw that none of them objected to Jiang Choshui's words, she immediately pointed at them and laughed coldly. "Good, very good. Do all of you think Baoer is stupid? You outer court disciples only obtain 20 energy stones every single month, whereas the outer court disciple ranked at the top of the outer court rankings obtains an extra 100 energy stones every single month. So, how could all of you possess so many energy stones? All of you intend to trick Baoer to a quiet place and then kill Baoer, right?" The smile on Jiang Choshui's face froze when he heard this. He'd never expected that this little girl before him would actually be so intelligent, and he immediately said with a smile, "We're outer court disciples? How could we do something like killing another? I'm telling the truth. If you're willing to come with us, then we'll definitely give you the energy stones. If you're unwilling to go with us to get it, then I'm helpless as well. I'm telling the truth, right?" As he spoke, he glanced at the others behind him. "Yes, little girl, if you don't go with us to get it, then we can't do anything about it as well. We're all outer court disciples. Could it be that we would trick you of this little bit of energy stones?" "Exactly. Little girl, come with us to go get it. We'll pay all the energy stones to you. Look, do we seem like deceitful people?" As she watched all of them act shamelessly, Baoer was angered to the point her face flushed red, and she pointed at all of them and said, "Good, good, very good. No one has ever dared to bully Baoer. Just all of you wait. Just you wait." As she spoke, Baoer ran towards the life and death arena. When they saw Baoer had been angered to the point of leaving, all of the outer court disciples instantly heaved sighs of relief, and then they watched Baoer as they wanted to see what she intended to do. When he saw Baoer run onto the life and death arena, the outer court elder below the arena frowned. Yet when he noticed the character on Baoer's chest, his brows knit together even more tightly, and he said with a light voice, "Why has this little she-devil come here?" When he noticed Baoer run up the life and death arena, Yang Yi, who was absorbing an energy stone, opened his eyes and was just about to greet her. However, right at this moment, Baoer pointed towards the outer court disciples in the distance and said loudly, "I, Baoer, declare that from today onward, the Talisman Peak will stop providing any talisman-related rewards of all outer court disciples, and the Talisman Peak will stop accepting requests to inscribe and repair treasures from all the outer court elders. In short, so long as it's related to the words outer court, then the Talisman Peak refuses to provide all services." When they heard Baoer, all of them were first stunned, and then they roared with laughter. Even Jiang Choshui and the other outer court disciples roared with laughter. Who does she think she is? The sect master? I'm going to die from laughter. Refuse to provide all talisman-related rewards of the outer court disciples? Has she gone mad from rage? This is the best joke I've heard since I arrived at the sword sect. Ha ha ha. When he heard Baoer, the expression of Elder Chaohua, who stood below the life and death arena, changed greatly, and he turned around to look at those outer court disciples that were roaring with laughter and immediately shouted, "Shut up!" His voice was covered in profound energy, and it resounded like thunder by the ears of the few hundreds of outer court disciples. The expressions of all the outer court disciples immediately changed, and they looked at the furious outer court elder while wondering why he'd berated them. Chao Hui didn't pay any attention to the outer court disciples, and his figure flashed to directly appear on the life and death arena. As he looked at Bauer, who was still furious, a smile appeared on Chao Hui's solemn face as he said, "So, it's Bauer. Why have you come here to play today?" When they saw this scene, the hearts of all the outer court disciples below the arena jerked because they knew that perhaps this matter was slightly serious. When he saw this elder suddenly appear on the life and death arena, Xianxia's expression became heavy while he said in his heart, "The King Realm. After the 9 ranks in the mortal realm, it was the first heaven realm. After the first heaven realm was the King Realm. This old man before him was able to fly without relying on any external forces, and that was something only someone at the King Realm could accomplish. However, an expert at the King Realm was actually so respectful to this little girl, Bauer, and this caused Yang Yi to be even more curious of Bauer's identity. When she saw the old man wearing the clothes of an outer court elder, Bauer immediately grunted coldly and said, "You go ask them yourself. Let me tell you, if you don't give me an explanation, then the Talisman Peak won't welcome any of you outer court disciples or outer court elders again." When he heard Bauer, Chao Hui smiled bitterly before his figure flashed, and he transformed into an afterimage that instantly appeared before Jiang Qiushui and the others. He said in a cold voice, "What happened? If you dare conceal anything, then I'll cripple your cultivations and expel you from the Sword Sect." All of them were astounded in their hearts. They immediately didn't dare conceal anything and obediently spoke of everything. When he heard they owed the little she-devil over 300,000 energy stones, Chao Hui's face twitched, and when they heard them say they asked Bauer to go get it with them, Chao Hui's gaze turned icy cold. He was aged and experienced, so how could he be unaware of their intentions? He glanced coldly at all of them before he said, "You asked her to follow all of you when it was a few hundreds of thousands of energy stones? Did all of you intend to kill her to keep her quiet? Good, very good. I really want to kill the lot of you. Let me tell all of you, if you're unable to beg her to withdraw what she said, then I guarantee that all of you'll become the public enemy of every single outer court elder and outer court disciple." When they heard Chao Hui, all of their countenances turned ghastly pale. Jiang Qiushui cupped his fist to the old and said respectfully, "Elder, who exactly is that little girl?" "That doesn't matter," Chao Hui shouted. "Now, all of you go borrow energy stones from your own friends and those outer court elders. Tell those elders about the incident between all of you and the little girl. For the sake of their own benefits, they'll borrow the energy stones to you. Elder, this amount is truly a bit too much." This, Jiang Qiushui revealed a troubled expression. "Do all of you intend to be crippled and kicked out of the Sword Sect?" Chao Hui spoke coldly. All of their figures trembled when they heard this. Now, they knew that this matter was really serious, and they immediately didn't dare say another word and hurriedly left to borrow energy stones. On the arena, after he heard about the incident between Bauer and those outer court disciples, a wisp of warmth flowed through Yang Ye's heart. Never had he expected that this little girl would actually trust him so much, and she actually dared to bet a few hundreds of thousands of energy stones for his sake. Humph, I'll absolutely not let them off easily this time. They actually intended to kill me to keep me silent. When she thought about the actions of those outer court disciples, Bauer got angrier the more she thought about it. Since she was young, she'd never been bullied by another. The old man from before appeared once more on the life and death arena, and he sighed in his heart when he saw Bauer was still angry. After that, he said with a smile, "Bauer, look, I've already asked them to prepare the energy stones. So those words from before, can you?" Bauer grunted coldly and said, "I won't take those words back. Let me tell you, since you're lost, then you should hand over the energy stones to me." Yet they didn't want to give it to me and even intended to trick me to a quiet place to kill me. Geezer, let me tell you, all of you're dead once my grandpa returns. In the future, all of you outer court elders can dream of coming to Talisman Peak and asking my grandpa to inscribe things for all of you. When he heard Bauer, Chao Hui's smile froze, and he cursed the entire families of those outer court disciples. because not only had they courted death, they'd even implicated the outer court elders. He immediately squeezed out a smile and said in a gentle voice, "Bower, little ancestor, this matter isn't related to us outer court elders. Don't tell your grandfather about this. All right?" "No," Bower said hatefully. "I'm going to tell my grandpa. How dare your outer court disciples bully me?" When he saw Bower was still angry, Chao Hua was helpless because how could he dare to offend this young miss? After around an hour later, Jiang Qiushui and the others had returned. This time, it wasn't just these outer court disciples that had arrived, and there were another 4 outer court elders in green and white robed. Yang Yi even knew one of these elders, and it was Elder Qin. When he saw Elder Qin, Yang Yi hurriedly bowed to Elder Qin, and Elder Qin nodded back at him as well. After that, Elder Qin's gaze descended onto Bower because all of them had come to apologize to this little she-devil. When the 4 outer court elders saw Bower, their expressions changed slightly. A round-faced elder amongst them smiled at Bower, and then he withdrew a ring and said, Bower, there are 390,000 energy stones here. Take out your spatial ring and I'll transfer it to you." When he spoke the words 390,000 energy stones, this elder's face twitched slightly while his heart felt like it was bleeding. All of these energy stones had been put together by all of the outer court elders and outer court disciples, and the entire outer court could be said to be broke because of this bet. Bower grunted coldly and took the old man's ring before she pointed it to the tiny pouch she had before her. With a thought, the ring instantly emanated a wave of silver light. After a short moment, Bower raised the ring with the intention of giving it back to the old man. However, she seemed to have thought of something, causing her hand to shrink back, and she waved the ring in her hand and said, "Give me this as well. You don't have any objections, right?" The elder's hand that had been stretched forward stopped in midair, and his expression was extremely colorful. After a short moment, he laughed dryly and said, No problem." At the same time, he cursed in his heart, "Bastards! I'll punish all of you to death. A spatial ring is worth 100,000 gold coins. Yet it's gone just like that." After she put the spatial ring away, Bower's little face revealed a wisp of a smile. However, she seemed to have thought of something and turned around to look at the outer court disciples below the arena, and her expression instantly turned cold before she said, "Geezer, Bower isn't an unreasonable person. They didn't intend to give me my energy stones and even intended to kill me to keep me quiet. Disciples like this have bad dispositions, and they're countless times inferior to the little laborer." Yes, the round-faced elder hurriedly nodded, and then he said in a light voice, Then Bower, let's end this matter here, all right?" The reason they'd gathered sufficient energy stones was for the sake of making Bower cool down and take back what she'd said earlier, because they couldn't afford to offend the Talisman Peak. "No, I'm going to look for my grandpa and ask him to uphold justice for me. All of you are dead." Bower glared at the round-faced elder and spoke with anger. She'd never been bullied since she was young, yet these outer court disciples actually intended to kill her to keep her quiet today. She was unable to swallow this grievance. When they heard Bower still intended to go tell her grandfather, the faces of the 4 elders twitched, and they said in their hearts, "How can you act like that? You've taken the energy stones yet refused to put an end to the matter? Aren't you bullying us?" Suddenly, the round-faced elder looked at Yang Yi, who was by Bower's side, and he hesitated for a moment before walking over to Yang Ye's side. He patted Yang Yi on the shoulder and said with a smile, "You're Yang Yi, huh? Heroes really do emerge from the young. You actually defeated Duan Jun that was at the 8th rank of the mortal realm. How extraordinary." Yang Yi had a slightly strange expression because he recognized this elder before him. He was called Feng Yu and was an elder that possessed extremely great authority in the outer court. At that time, it was precisely this old man and the other 2 old men by his side that had called Yang Yi the number 1 piece of trash in the sword sect, and they'd even ridiculed Elder Qin for being unable to see clearly. Yet now, he'd come to praise Yang Yi instead. Yang Yi turned around to look at Bower while he felt even more curious towards Bower's identity. He was naturally aware that this elder had definitely praised him because the elder wanted him to help persuade Bower. However, Yang Yi wouldn't persuade Bauer so easily, and he intended to allow Bauer to torture these old fellows first. Of course, just look who little laborer's friend is. Meanwhile, Bauer walked over to Yang Ye's side and nodded to the old man with a round face. And then she said, "Geezer, even though you're ugly, your discerning ability isn't bad. The little laborer is extremely formidable. All of these disciples of yours are idiots because they actually didn't believe he could win. They're really idiots. It's working." Besides Elder Qian, all the other outer court elders here exchanged glances, and they were delighted in their hearts. The round-faced elder said with a smile, "Yes, yes, he's a genius. He defeated someone at the 8th rank of the mortal realm while at the 6th rank. He's a genius, a huge genius. Feng Yu, didn't you say that I was unable to see clearly and recruited the number 1 piece of trash in history into the sword sect? So, when did Yang Yi become a huge genius in your eyes?" At this moment, Elder Qian spoke with ridicule. He still remembered how these old fellows acted when Yang Yi wasn't able to become a profounder, and even until now, these few elders still used Yang Yi to ridicule him. Now that he had an opportunity to slap them on the face, he would naturally not let it slip by. When they heard Elder Qian, the other outer court elders were shocked in their hearts. Feng Yu looked at Yang Yi and said, You're that Yang Yi? That Yang Yi who wasn't able to become a profounder after a year." Yang Yi nodded. When they saw Yang Yi nod, their expressions became slightly unnatural. They'd indeed spoken those words at that time. It was extremely normal for the outer court elders to frequently quarrel with each other. If Yang Yi wasn't friends with Bauer, then even if he'd attained the 6th rank of the mortal realm, they still wouldn't take him seriously at all. However, this number 1 piece of trash of the past was the little she-devil's friend now, and he was the person that was most likely to be capable of making the little she-devil take back her words from just now. The elders were conflicted. Beg for mercy? They were unable to stoop so low and lose face like that. Don't beg for mercy? Then once the little she-devil returned and told the old devil about it, then the outer court would be finished. "Geezer, you said Yang Yi is the number 1 piece of trash in history?" Meanwhile, Bauer gazed at Feng Yu with a hostile expression. She just said that this old fellow's discerning ability wasn't bad. Yet she never expected that this geezer had actually said Yang Yi was the number 1 piece of trash in history. The strongest amongst the profound energy of the 5 elements, the gold element, was a piece of trash. Then what about her who possessed the wood element? Bauer was slightly angry. Feng Yu smiled embarrassedly and said, "No, it was us that were blind in the past, and we apologize for it. Brother Qian, we apologize for that. Even you're aware that it's extremely normal for us to quarrel with each other. So, don't make a fuss about it with us, all right? Ha. Yes, Yang Yi attained the 6th rank of the mortal realm in a short period of time. He can definitely be considered a genius with such natural talent. It was us who were blind. Don't take it to heart. Brother Qian, Yang Yi can be considered to be partially your disciple. Yang Yi is your disciple and Bauer's friend. So in the end, we're all family. Ha. Yeah, we're all family. It was just a misunderstanding earlier. It was just a misunderstanding. Ha. It was naturally impossible for a few elders to apologize to a labor disciple. They were unable to disregard their status, so they could only apologize to Elder Qian. When he saw the elders apologize, Yang Yi was slightly amused. However, he didn't feel complacent. He knew that these elders had only apologized because of Bauer. Otherwise, even if he'd attained the 8th rank of the mortal realm now, he would probably be an insignificant disciple in the eyes of these elders. If he wanted to make these elders really think highly of him and understand how blind they were in the past, then he had to pass through the outer court exam and use his strength to prove it. Elder Qian didn't become complacent as well, and he similarly understood this principle. If it wasn't for Bauer, these old fellows would absolutely not bend before him. Even though it was like this, he still felt extremely satisfied because he'd been infuriated by these old fellows on many occasions in the past year. It was best to stop being going too far. Yang Yi pulled on Bauer's hand and walked to the side before he said, "Bauer, take back what you said earlier, all right? If I take those words back, would they stop looking down on you in the future?" As she looked at Yang Yi, Bauer blinked. She wasn't stupid, and she naturally knew that it was definitely because of her that those geezers suddenly apologized. Yang Yi nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, if Bauer takes back those words because of me, then they'll definitely owe me a favor, and I'll definitely receive a great deal of care while I'm in the outer court." Bauer pondered deeply for a moment, and then she smiled as she nodded. She pulled Yang Ye's hand and walked over to stand before those 5 outer court elders with anxious expressions, and she said, "All of you geezers, I'll let the matter go this time, but let me tell all of you, I did it because of the little laborer, and if all of you dare to bully me again." "Humph, humph," she grunted twice, and her intent to threaten them was obvious. When they heard this, all the outer court elders instantly heaved sighs of relief in their hearts. Feng Yu hurriedly said, We absolutely won't. In the future, if another dares to disrespect Bauer, then I'll smash him to death." When he spoke up to hear, Feng Yu's wrist spun before a sword appeared, and he passed it to Yang Yi and said, "Little Yang, this is a high-grade yellow rank dark iron sword. It's of no use in my possession, so you can have it." When he saw Feng Yu give Yang Yi a sword, Chao Hua withdrew a piece of iron armor and passed it to Yang Yi before he said, "This is a high-grade yellow rank dark iron armor. It's of no use in my possession as well, so you can have it. It ought to be of use to use. These are 10 meridian shield pills, and they're able to protect your meridians well and allow your meridians to endure intense training. Take it. This is the copy of the yellow rank sword technique, energy split sword technique. Take it and cultivate it as well." In next to no time, all the outer court elders besides Elder Qian had given Yang Yi a treasure. Yang Yi hesitated for a moment before he took all of them. He knew that these elders before him were trying to curry favor, and he knew why they were trying to curry favor as well. If he refused, then these elders would definitely think that he held hatred in his heart, and he would definitely encounter trouble while he was in the sword sect in the future. After he received all those treasures, Yang Yi turned around to look at Bauer, who was grinning at the side, and he felt extremely curious in his heart. He was curious about Bauer's identity. He knew that the identity of being a talisman master was extremely lofty, yet these elders before him were obviously terrified of Bauer's grandfather. Is Bauer's grandfather an earth talisman master, or a heaven talisman master? The elders revealed smiles when they saw Yang Yi receive those treasures. Yang Ye's natural talent couldn't be said to be good, yet he knew Bauer and was even able to affect her decisions. So forming a good relationship with Yang Yi was absolutely not a wrong decision, and it was obvious from the smile on Bauer's face when they gave things to Yang Yi. "All of you geezers aren't bad." Bauer nodded to those outer court elders, and then she looked at the outer court disciples and said, "How are all of you going to punish them?" Bauer wouldn't let those outer court disciples go easily. At this moment, Yang Yi went silent as well. These outer court elders hadn't done anything that would harm Bauer, and that was why he would persuade Bauer. However, those outer court disciples intended to kill Bauer to silence her, and this was something Yang Yi was unable to tolerate. In his heart, Bauer had become his friend since a long time ago. Feng Yu hesitated for a moment when he heard this, and then a wisp of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. He turned around to look at those outer court disciples and said, "All the outer court disciples that participated in the gamble, head to the enforcement hall to receive 100 whips, and then head to Star or Mountain to mine for a month. Everything obtained from the mining will be handed over to the sect. Go now, all of you." When they heard Feng Yu, the countenance of those outer court disciples instantly turned ghastly pale. 100 whips were still all right, and it would at most hurt for a few days. However, the Star or Mountain was terrifying because it was a place that was utilized to punish the disciples that committed heavy offenses in the sword sect. There were no human rights there, and even if one didn't perish there, the consequences would still be unbearable. When he saw their expressions, Feng Yu was slightly unable to bear the sigh of it as well. However, he knew that if he punished them lightly, then once this little she-devil was dissatisfied and told that old devil on Talisman Peak about this incident, it wouldn't just be the outer court disciples that suffered misfortune. Even all of the outer court elders would suffer misfortune as well. In the sword sect, even the sect master wouldn't easily offend that old devil. Humph! Bauer was still slightly displeased and was just about to say something. However, Yang Yi hurriedly pulled her small hand and walked away from the life and death arena. Yang Yi knew that this punishment could be considered to be extremely heavy. If Bauer was still dissatisfied, then it was very likely for it to cause those outer court disciples to retaliate. At that time, the matter would be severe. He didn't care about those outer court elders, but he cared about Elder Qian, and he was truly unwilling to allow Elder Qian to be harmed in any way because of this matter. When they saw Yang Yi pulling Bauer away, all the outer court elders here instantly heaved sighs of relief in succession. Feng Yu looked at Elder Qian and said, "Brother Qian, this time, it was all thanks to that kid you recruited. I won't say anything else. Just take it as we owe him a favor." The others nodded in agreement. They knew that the little she-devil was still dissatisfied earlier, and it would truly be troublesome for them. After all, those outer court disciples were the disciples of the Sword Sect, so if the punishment they gave was too heavy, it was very likely for it to cause retaliation amongst them, and it was even to the extent that it might cause those outer court disciples to be bitterly disappointed with the sect. Needless to say, Yang Ye's actions of pulling Bauer away had helped them deal with an enormous problem. A labor disciple defeated an outer court disciple. Did all of you see that? Ha ha ha. Yes, Yang Yi can be said to have brought pride to us labor disciples. In the future, would anyone dare say that we labor disciples are lowly? Ha ha. And outer court disciple. At that time, I'd already said that Yang Yi is extraordinary, and one day he would definitely soar up like a true dragon within an abyss. All of you believe me now, right? You idiot. Did you even speak like that at that time? On this day, all the disciples on Labor Peak were discussing Yang Yi, and numerous labor disciples didn't even do their work. 7 Refinement Peak was the place where outer court disciples cultivated, and it had seen training grounds called the Gold Armor Formation, Woodsman Alley, 1,000 Layers of Water, Lava Cave, Gravity Cavern, Cold Wind Ridge, and Thunder God Gorge. However, the 7 Refinement Peak wasn't free to use. If one desired to train on 7 Refinement Peak, then besides those that were ranked at the top 10 on the outer court rankings, others had no choice but to utilize contribution points of the sect to exchange for time to cultivate there. On the other hand, contribution points could only be obtained by heading to the Grand Myriad Mountains to hunt dark beasts, or by accepting and completing some assignments of the sect. The difficulty of the sect's assignments was extremely great, and ordinary outer court disciples would utterly not dare accept them. Only those outer court disciples with extraordinary natural talent and formidable strengths would dare accept the assignments of the sect. Amongst over 1,000 outer court disciples, only less than 50 were able to enter 7 Refinement Peak, and these 50 were the strongest group of experts amongst the outer court disciples. Big Brother Qingyu, that Yang Yi has become a profounder, and he even defeated Duan Jun, who's at the 8th rank of the mortal realm while at the 6th rank himself. At this moment at the Woodsman Alley, an outer court disciple spoke in a low voice to a white-robed man that stood before him. The white-robed man was precisely Lu Qingyu that was ranked at the 29th position on the outer court rankings. He was reputed to be the most dazzling genius of South Peace City, and he was already a First Heaven Realm expert at the age of 17. When he heard that outer court disciple, Lu Qingyu frowned and said, "That piece of trash is already a profounder?" When he headed to the Sword Sect that day, his father had told him to deal with Yang Yi if he had the chance. However, when he arrived at the Sword Sect, he noticed that Yang Yi wasn't an outer court disciple any longer and was a labor disciple instead. Moreover, Yang Yi was the number 1 piece of trash in history. So, he didn't make a move to deal with Yang Yi because Yang Yi wasn't worthy of him making a move. Yet now, he'd never expected that Yang Yi was already a profounder. Yes, but he seems to not be an outer court disciple yet. Should we deal with him? Lu Qingyu pondered deeply for a moment, and then he shook his head while a cold glow flashed in his eyes as he said, "Come, let's go meet this piece of trash that has already become a profounder, Cool Breeze Gorge. Little laborer, this spatial ring is for you. There are some energy stones within it." At the side of the pool, Bauer smiled as she passed the spatial ring she'd extorted from Feng Yu just now. As he looked at this spatial ring, Yang Ye's eyelids twitched, and he pondered deeply for a moment before he shook his head and said, "Bauer, this ring is too precious. I can't accept it. If he said he wasn't tempted by a spatial treasure like the spatial ring, then it would obviously be a lie. However, Yang Yi had his own limits when doing things. Little laborer, what are you saying? Bauer will be unhappy. Bauer rolled her eyes at Yang Yi and said, it's only a spatial ring, and it isn't something great. Moreover, it would have been impossible for Bauer to win so many things without you. If you refuse it again, then Bauer will toss it away. A strand of warmth flowed in Yang Ye's heart when he heard this, and he stopped refusing and received the ring in Bauer's hand. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something, and he hurriedly withdrew that strength talisman he'd crafted and passed it to Bauer before he said, Bauer, this is a strength talisman I crafted. It's a high-grade talisman. You can have it. MMM. When she saw Yang Yi accept the ring, Bauer smiled and nodded. Suddenly, her eyes opened wide and she said, You said you've already crafted a strength talisman? And it's even a high-grade talisman? Yes. Yang Yi nodded. You wouldn't be lying to me, right? Bauer glanced suspiciously at Yang Yi and said, Little laborer. Bauer really hates if others lie to Bauer. Yang Yi rolled his eyes and said, Wouldn't you know if I'm lying or not once you take a look? Bauer took the strength talisman in Yang Ye's hand, and when she saw the lifelike light golden flame on it, Bauer was instantly stunned. She was stunned for quite a long time before she muttered, How could this be possible? It's really a high-grade talisman, it's really a high-grade talisman. How could this be possible? When he noticed Bauer seem as if she'd lost her soul, Yang Yi said in a light voice, What is it? Is it good or not? Bauer raised her head to look at Yang Yi, and she suppressed the excitement in her heart and said, You said that you crafted this talisman within half a month of time? Yes. Yang Yi nodded and said, I failed quite a few times before this, and I wasted quite a bit of the materials you gave me. When he spoke up to hear, Yang Yi was slightly embarrassed. Bauer glanced at Yang Yi with a strange expression, and she said in her heart, Grandpa is such a liar. Bauer spent 3 months of time to craft a talisman, and it was only a mid-grade talisman. Yet Grandpa actually said Bauer is a genius. He definitely tricked me. Humph. Once you return, I'll pull off your entire beard. What's wrong? Am I too stupid? Yang Yi asked when he saw Bauer remain silent. Bauer's expression grew stranger when she heard this. After a short while, her expression returned to normal, and she looked at Yang Yi and nodded before she said, You only crafted a single talisman in half a month of time. In terms of natural talent, it's pretty ordinary. A little bit inferior to Bauer. As soon as she finished speaking, her small face turned red for no reason. However, Yang Yi heaved a sigh of relief instead when he heard Bauer, and he said, That's good. Right, Bauer, I'm not really familiar with the talismans of the other attributes. How about you teach me? About that. Bauer feigned a troubled expression, and when she saw Yang Ye's anxious expression, she hurriedly said, I can if you agree to a condition. What condition? Yang Yi was slightly excited. If he was able to become a talisman master, then it would be greatly beneficial to his strength and future. I'll represent my grandfather to take you as his disciple, and you have to agree to be my grandfather's disciple. Yes, in other words, my junior brother. What do you think? Bauer looked at Yang Yi while her lively eyes flickered with a strange glow. Be your junior brother? Yang Yi was stunned. What? Are you unwilling? Bauer spoke with slight displeasure. Yang Yi hurriedly shook his head and said, No, the accomplished are superior. I'm naturally willing to be Bauer's junior brother. But Bauer, is your grandfather willing to take me as his disciple? At that time, if he's unwilling, then Yes, he was still slightly worried. After all, every single talisman master was extremely formidable. If Bauer's grandfather didn't think highly of him at that time, then how embarrassing would it be for him? When she heard this, the displeasure on Bauer's face was completely wiped away, and she said with a smile, There's no need to care about him. It's fine so long as I'm willing. All right, now you're Bauer's junior brother. Yes, senior sister will take good care of you. It's slightly late now, so I'll come to look for you when I have the time. Study the talismans of the other elements first in the next few days. I'll test you in all of these assignments when I come see you next. Understand? Yang Yi didn't dare shake his head, and he immediately nodded. When she saw Yang Yi nod, Bauer nodded with satisfaction and said, "It's getting late. I'm leaving first, and I'll be taking this strength talisman back to study. Inspect. There's no need to give it to me." As soon as she finished speaking, Bauer ran out of Cool Breeze Gorge. At the instant she turned away from Yang Yi, her solemn little face immediately bloomed into a smile while she said in her heart, "I found a treasure. Ha ha ha." This treasure was noticed by Bauer, and he has even become Bauer's junior brother. Hee hee. Yang Yi kept having the feeling that something was slightly off. Bauer was around the age of little Yao, and both of them were slightly naughty and intelligent, so he felt that she definitely concealed something from him. Forget it. In any case, she definitely has no ill intent towards me. Yang Yi smiled as he shook his head, and he stopped thinking about Bauer's strange actions. He placed his gaze onto the spatial ring Bauer gave him, and as he looked at it, he felt slightly excited. Because this was a spatial ring, and even the governor of South Peace City might not possess one. After playing with it for a while, Yang Yi immersed his spiritual energy into the ring, and his heart suddenly jerked when he saw the space within the ring. The space within this ring seemed to be a bit too large. It was around more than 70 meters in both height and length, and it wasn't just that, there was a large amount of energy stones within the ring. Moreover, the pile of energy stones at least amounted to a total of over 100,000. When he recalled what Bauer said earlier, the corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched. Earlier, Bauer had said that she'd placed some energy stones within it, and he thought that it was only a few hundred, yet never had he imagined that it would actually be over 100,000. This favor I owe her is really huge. As he looked at those energy stones, Yang Yi shook his head and smiled. This time, he could be considered to have understood what being wealthy meant. After he placed the ring on his finger, Yang Yi restrained his thoughts and withdrew the high-grade yellow-rank dark iron sword that Elder Feng Yu had given him. The dark iron sword was 1.6 m in length, 2 fingers in breadth, and its entire blade emanated a piercingly cold glow that was extremely sharp. A casual swing of the sword instantly emanated a light howl as it sliced through the air. What a sword! As he looked at the sword in his hand, a wisp of happiness flashed in Yang Ye's eyes, and he said in a low voice, "I originally intended to head to the sword pavilion to choose a sword after I became an outer court disciple, but I never expected that Feng Yu would actually give me a sword, and it's even a high-grade yellow rank sword. Now, I finally don't have to utilize a tree branch to train in the sword. The outer court exam held once every 2 years in the sword sect will be held in another 28 days. With my current strength, it ought to not be difficult for me to become an outer court disciple. However, if I want to be ranked in the top 10, then my strength is definitely slightly insufficient and I must improve my strength." As he looked at the sword in his hand, Yang Yi muttered lightly. The outer court exam of the sword sect could be said to be a grand event in the state of Jing. There was a total of 9 states in the Grand Qin Empire, and every single state had a few tens of thousands of cities within it. The sword sect belonged within the scope of the state of Jing. At that time, all the disciples of the clans within the nearby cities and the independent cultivators there would head over to the outer court exam. There were countless geniuses amongst them, so the difficulty to obtain the top 10 positions amongst all of these people was obvious. It was extremely difficult to obtain a position in the top 10, but there were benefits as well. Not only would one obtain rewards like medicinal pills, talismans, and treasures from the sect, the sword sect would even place emphasis on fostering the top 10, causing the cultivation resources they obtained to far exceed others. Even though natural talent was important, cultivation resources were even more important. Because no matter how great of a genius one was, if one didn't possess the fostering of a sect, then one would be reduced to a piece of trash as well. Yang Ye's target was to be in the top 10. Besides, for the sake of vindicating himself and Elder Qian, it was also for the sake of being valued by the sect. Lu Qingyu was already an expert on the outer court rankings, so he was definitely already valued by the sect. So, if Yang Yi wasn't able to make the sect value him and surpass Lu Qingyu, then how could he take revenge on the Lu clan? When he thought of the Lu clan and Lu Qingyu, a strand of cold light flashed past Yang Ye's eyes. No matter what, he was determined to make this clan pay the price. Yang Yi suppressed the killing intent in his heart and took a deep breath. After that, he headed to the training grounds as he intended to ask Elder Qian about the situation at his home. Presently, he was most worried about the situation of his younger sister and mother in South Peace City. Trash! Stop right there! As soon as he arrived at the training grounds, Yang Yi was stopped by someone, and he frowned when he heard this voice. When he turned around and looked at the person who spoke and saw that person's appearance, a wisp of ghastly killing intent flashed in the depths of Yang Ye's eyes. The person that stopped him was a man around his age. The man had slanted brows, starry eyes, and a fluttering green robe, yet his face had a ridiculing smile. There were two green-robed men standing on each side of this man as well, and they were both outer court disciples. Yang Yi hadn't seen this man in the past, but he knew who this man was. This man before him was definitely Lu Qingyu. There were many outer court disciples training on the training grounds today. When they saw these 5 people obstructing Yang Ye's path, many of them stride over and looked curiously at Yang Yi and the others. "I'm Lu Qingyu." As he gazed at Yang Ye's hostile gaze, Lu Qingyu held a ridiculing smile on the corners of his mouth as he said, "Yang Yi, I truly never expected that you'd actually become a profounder, and you even surmounted 2 ranks to defeat Duan Jun. What a surprise!" When they heard Lu Qingyu, some of the nearby outer court disciples exploded into an uproar, and then they looked at Lu Qingyu with gazes of slight adoration. It's actually Lu Qingyu who's ranked at the 29th position on the outer court rankings. What's he doing here instead of training on 7 Refinement Peak? An expert on the outer court rankings? Doesn't that mean that he's already an expert at the First Heaven Realm? My God, a First Heaven Realm expert. One that's around 16 or 17 years of age. The outer court rankings are really abnormal. I heard that some inner court elders have already started paying attention to him. So once he enters the inner court, his future would be boundless. When he saw the gazes of adoration these outer court disciples shot at him, Lu Qingyu seemed to really enjoy it, and the proud expression on his face grew even deeper. As he looked at Lu Qingyu who stood before him, Yang Yi took a deep breath and suppressed the killing intent in his heart before he said indifferently, "Are you done?" Needless to say, Yang Ye's indifferent expression was really detestable to his enemies, and Lu Qingyu really detested it as well. When he heard Yang Ye's words that practically disregarded him and Yang Ye's carefree expression, Lu Qingyu's eyes narrowed. He seemed to have thought of something, and he smiled as he said, "Yang Yi, we could have been relatives. My father took a fancy to your mother while my brother took a fancy to your younger sister. This is a blessing for your entire family, yet all of you don't know what's good for you." Yang Yi laughed with ridicule, and he interrupted Lu Qingyu and said, "Lu Qingyu, I've taken a fancy to your mother, and I've taken a fancy to all the females in your Lu clan. Ask your mother and all the females in your Lu clan to marry me. Then wouldn't we still be able to become relatives?" When they heard Yang Yi, the eyelids of all the outer court disciples twitched. Because Lu Qingyu was an expert ranked at the 29th position on the outer court rankings. Even though members of the sect could only attack another on the life and death arena, Yang Yi seemed to be a bit too brave in their opinion. Lu Qingyu's face sank while a strand of imposing aura surged explosively from his body. His finger pointed at Yang Yi while a strand of fierce white-colored sword chi tore through the air, and it carried a sharp whistle as it shot violently towards Yang Yi. He was naturally clearly aware that he couldn't attack a member of the sect at any other place besides the life and death arena. However, rules were there to restrain the weak, and he believed that even if he killed Yang Yi, the sect wouldn't do anything to him. After all, he was already a First Heaven Realm expert, and Yang Yi was still a labor disciple. That strand of sword chi was extremely swift, and the nearby outer court disciples were practically unable to see that strand of sword chi and could only see a white light flash in their fields of vision. At the moment that Lu Qingyu made a move, Yang Yi felt a strand of vital energy lock onto him. At this moment, he felt that he was utterly unable to dodge, and he could only forcefully break through Lu Qingyu's sword chi. However, that strand of sword chi was too swift, and it was utterly not something he could avoid and react to now. Is this the strength of a first heaven realm expert? When he noticed a strand of the aura of death envelop him, Xianxia muttered in his heart. Right at this moment, Elder Qian suddenly appeared by Xianxia's side. Elder Qian flicked his sleeve, causing a strand of strong wind to blow out, and then a bang resounded as Lu Qingyu's strand of sword qi was instantly dispersed in midair. Lu Qingyu, according to the rules of the sect, besides on the life and death arena, it's prohibited to attack another member of the sect at any other place. Have you forgotten? Elder Qian looked at Lu Qingyu while his voice carried slight rage. Xianxia possessed profound energy of the 5 elements, and he would absolutely not allow Xianxia to die at a place like this. When he saw it was Elder Qian, Lu Qingyu's gaze flickered while he suppressed the killing intent in his heart, and he cupped his hands towards Elder Qian and said, Elder Qian, Xianxia humiliated my family members, so I was just giving him a small lesson, and I didn't have any other intentions. Even though he was slightly angry towards this old man, he didn't dare to display it. After all, he was still an outer court disciple now, and he was under the jurisdiction of the outer court elders. Elder Qian grunted coldly, yet he didn't punish Lu Qingyu. Even though Lu Qingyu was merely an outer court disciple, his natural talent was at the top in the outer court. Moreover, some inner court elders had already started paying attention to him. So Elder Qian was unable to punish Lu Qingyu for such a trivial matter. Since he's fine, then Qingyu will be bidding my farewells now. Lu Qingyu cupped his fists to Elder Qian before he turned around with the intention of leaving. However, Xianxia spoke at this moment. Wait! Lu Qingyu turned around to look at Xianxia, and dense disdain filled the corners of his mouth as he said, What? Elder Qian frowned and was just about to say something when he saw Xianxia walk in front of him. Xianxia pointed at Lu Qingyu and said, Lu Qingyu, I know you want to kill me, and I'll give you this chance. We'll fight on the life and death arena 3 months from now. Do you dare? Since he stepped onto the path of the martial Dao, then he could only advance courageously, overcome all the obstacles in his path, and become stronger without end. He had no path of retreat, and Xianxia didn't want to give himself a path of retreat. He wanted to force himself. When they heard Xianxia, all the outer court disciples in the vicinity gaped to the point an egg could be pushed down their throats. A labor disciple challenging an outer court disciple had already caused the entire outer court to be shocked. Yet now, this labor disciple intended to challenge Lu Qingyu, who was ranked at the 29th position on the outer court rankings and had attained the first heaven realm. Is this labor disciple trying to defy the heavens? Ha ha! After he recovered from his shock, Lu Qingyu roared with laughter, and when he noticed Elder Qian intended to speak, he hurriedly said, All right, I agree. We'll fight 3 months from now on the life and death arena. I hope you don't disappoint me when the time comes. As soon as he finished speaking, he roared with laughter, and then he left the others to leave quickly as if he was worried that Elder Qian would stop him. When he saw Lu Qingyu leave, Elder Qian sighed and said, Xianxia, you were too impulsive just now. You're only at the 6th rank of the mortal realm now, and the gap between you and a first heaven realm expert is huge, really huge. Xianxia said in a low voice, Elder Qian, I'm aware. I'm pushing myself into a desperate situation to eventually win the battle. He intended to kill me just now. Elder Qian, you were here this time, but would you be here the next time? If Elder Qian isn't here during the next time, and he kills me directly, would the sect punish him? No. Now that I've made an agreement to fight him 3 months from now, he'll definitely not make a move against me in these 3 months of time. In this way, I still have a chance. Elder Qian's lips moved, yet he didn't say anything in the end. How could he be unaware of this? However, it was utterly impossible for one to surpass the first heaven realm from the 6th rank of the mortal realm in 3 months of time. Even if Xianxia possessed 5-element profound energy, it was impossible for him to accomplish it in 3 months of time because it was truly little time. After staying silent for a moment, Elder Qian patted Xianxia on the shoulder and said, Little Yang, I originally intended to publicly announce that you possessed 5-element profound energy, but now it would seem like I can't. If I announce that you possess 5-element profound energy, then Lu Qingyu will absolutely not give you any chance to grow. Now, you can only work hard to allow yourself to possess the strength to go against him. Understand? Yang Yi nodded. Perhaps he wouldn't have a chance in the past, but he had the tiny vortex now, and he had those energy stones that Bauer gave him and the meridian shield pills those outer court elders gave him. He had the ability to try, and this time it wasn't just for the sake of his mother and younger sister, it was for his own sake as well. If he fought for it, then he would have a chance. And if he didn't, then he wouldn't have a chance at all. So, he'd taken the initiative to agree to fight on the life and death arena, and he didn't give himself a path of retreat at all. You go cultivate at ease. I've already made a trip to South Peace City, and I've warned the Liu clan. They won't look for trouble with your family for now. Moreover, your younger sister and mother are very well, and they both miss you, said Elder Qian. Younger sister, mother. When he heard these words, Yang Ye's firm expression revealed a wisp of a gentle smile. These two people were his conviction. They were his motivation, and he could disregard any hardships and exhaustion for their sake. After he bid his farewells to Elder Qian, Yang Yi walked quickly towards Cool Breeze Gorge. At this moment, he urgently needed to obtain strength. Attention, attention! A labor disciple has challenged the 29th on the outer court rankings, Lu Qingyu, to a battle on the life and death arena 3 months from now. Everyone, remember to go watch it in 3 months. A labor disciple challenged an expert on the outer court rankings? Is something wrong with you? Are you talking about that labor disciple who surmounted ranks of cultivation to defeat Duanjun? Of course it's him. Is any other labor disciple besides him that formidable? This labor disciple is really fucking formidable. He first challenged an outer court disciple, not he challenged an expert on the outer court rankings. Even though he's courting death, we have no choice but to admire him for his courage. It wasn't long before the news of Yang Yi challenging an outer court disciple had spread throughout the outer court, and it was even to the extent that some experts on the outer court rankings that were in 7 Refinement Peak had heard of it. A 6th rank Mortal Realm expert challenged a 1st Heaven Realm expert? The ignorant truly are fearless. This was something an expert on the outer court rankings said when he heard the news about Yang Yi challenging Lu Qingyu. Even though Lu Qingyu isn't really strong, he isn't someone a 6th rank Mortal Realm expert can challenge. I haven't left the 7 Refinement Peak for a long time. Now, even labor disciples are already so arrogant. Someone at the 6th rank of the Mortal Realm challenging a 1st Heaven Realm expert. Interesting. No matter if it was the Outer Court Peak or the 7 Refinement Peak, the news of Yang Ye's challenge was spreading throughout both these places at this moment. At this moment, Yang Ye's name had truly spread throughout the Outer Court. Cool Breeze Gorge. After he arrived at Cool Breeze Gorge, Yang Yi took out the high-grade yellow rank sword technique he'd obtained from one of the elders, the energy split sword technique, and he started looking through it carefully. Presently, he urgently needed to improve his strength. Energy split sword technique, high-grade yellow rank. A technique created by a senior of the sword sect. It possesses 10 levels, and every level allows one to execute a strand of sword chi. When fully cultivated, 10 strands of sword chi can be executed simultaneously to sweep through everything before it. As he looked through the description of the energy split sword technique, Yang Yi felt lucky that when he fought Duanjun on the life and death arena earlier, Duanjun had only learned the 1st level, and if Duanjun had learned a few more levels, then it would be dangerous for him. As he continued reading through it, Yang Ye's expression became heavier. The energy split sword technique was extremely formidable, and it was even to the extent that it was slightly terrifying. It wasn't really terrifying if it was only able to directly execute 10 strands of sword chi, yet the energy split sword technique was capable of energy split, and that meant the sword chi could appear at completely different directions. The direction the sword chi moved towards could be changed. When he imagined 10 strands of sword attacking an enemy from various directions, Yang Yi couldn't help but feel slightly excited. But in next to no time, he calmed down because it was extremely difficult to change the direction the strands of sword chi moved towards. It required that one's control of profound energy had arrived at an extremely shocking degree, and this sort of degree was something that even some outer court elders were unable to attain. Yang Yi took a deep breath and put the scroll away, and then he held the sword and slowly started training according to the circulation method in the energy split sword technique. No matter if it was for his younger sister, mother, or for himself, he wouldn't shrink back. Because in this world where strength was respected, one had no dignity or the right to speak without strength. Just like moments ago, Lu Qingyu's strength was higher than his own. So Lu Qingyu could willfully kill him and disregard the rules of the sect. In this world, strength was everything. He understood this principle when he was in South Peace City, yet he obtained a deeper understanding of this principle after he arrived at the Sword Sect. In the next few days, besides eating in the canteen, Yang Yi spent every single day cultivating bitterly in Cool Breeze Gorge, and he even slept in the gorge. With the Meridian Shield pills given by the Outer Court elders and the energy stones Bauer had given him, he was fully able to cultivate without any restraints. Crack! Crack! Yang Yi stood on an enormous rock while he ceaselessly swung the dark iron sword in his hand. If someone else was here, that person would definitely be astounded because every single time Yang Yi swung the dark iron sword, it wasn't just the resounding sound of air being torn apart that resounded. They even left behind a few sword images. Exactly how much strength was required to emanate resounding sounds of the air being torn apart? Exactly how swift did the sword have to be to leave behind sword imagines? After he finished practicing the basic sword technique, Yang Ye's sword pointed towards the ground at an angle, and his eyes closed slightly while his face remained composed. He was like a monk that had entered into a meditative state. Yang Ye's face was slightly thin, his features were handsome, and coupled with his graceful black hair, even though he couldn't be said to be a pretty boy, he was rather handsome. At this moment, Yang Yi was trying hard to control the scarce light golden profound energy in his body, and he guided them from his dantian towards the dark iron sword in his hand. However, those strings of profound energy within his body were like disobedient children, and no matter how Yang Yi urged them on, they refused to circulate along the circulation pathways of the energy split sword technique. After a few more minutes, numerous droplets of sweat slowly flowed down from Yang Ye's forehead. They flowed past his brows, flowed past his closed eyes, and flowed towards his lips. A cool breeze blew by, and the leaves in the forest rustled. A few withered and yellow leaves descended slowly from the sky, whereas the young man on the enormous rock was still standing ramrod straight like a status. After around an hour of time, suddenly, the dark iron sword in Yang Ye's hand was suffused with a light golden glow, and it trembled slightly as if it had come to life. After a moment of silence, Yang Ye's eyes suddenly opened up, and they emanated an extremely clear cold glow. Yang Yi held the dark iron sword in his hand as he suddenly swung it towards an enormous tree in the distance. Energy split sword technique. Yang Yi spoke lightly in his heart. After that, a light golden strand of sword chi flashed out from the tip of the dark iron sword. Bang! An enormous tree that required a few people to embrace and was over 10 m away from Yang Yi had been chopped into two along with this bang, and the point it was chopped was smooth like a mirror. Rumble! The upper half of the tree fell to the ground and caused countless dust and dirt to suffuse the air. As he looked at the tree that fell to the ground, Yang Ye's seemingly exhausted face wasn't able to conceal the excitement he felt. After cultivating day and night for 6 days, he hadn't just improved his basic sword technique again, he'd even cultivated the energy split sword technique to the first level. How could he not be excited by this? Suddenly, a feeling of emptiness surged from the bottom of Yang Ye's heart. It was the feeling of completely exhausting one's profound energy. Looks like unless it's a critical moment, otherwise, I can't rashly utilize this energy split sword technique. Yang Yi couldn't help but laugh bitterly as he looked at the dark iron sword in his hand. Even though the energy split sword technique was formidable, its consumption of profound energy was too terrifying. Just like this moment, he'd merely executed a single strand of sword chi, yet the profound energy within his body had been exhausted. Yang Yi withdrew an energy stone and held it in his hand before started to absorb the energy within it. The profound energy within the energy stone surged into his body and was instantly absorbed by the mysterious tiny vortex. Suddenly, Yang Yi frowned because the tiny vortex didn't give him some light golden profound energy as it had in the past. Has something happened again? When he thought up to here, Yang Yi couldn't help but feel slightly panicked, and he immersed his mind into his body. However, he was actually unable to enter the tiny vortex this time. In the past, he was able to enter the tiny vortex with his spiritual energy, but this time, it seemed like there was something on the tiny vortex that was obstructing him, causing him to be unable to observe the situation within the tiny vortex. When he noticed this, that feeling of panic spread completely from the bottom of Xianxia's heart, and he hurriedly withdrew over 10 energy stones and started absorbing them. However, it was still as it was before this. The profound energy was instantly absorbed by the tiny vortex, but the light golden profound energy still didn't flow out. "Brother, what are you playing at now?" Xianxia's expression was slightly unsightly when he noticed the tiny vortex only took but didn't give. Could it be that the tiny vortex intends to act like it did in the past? In next to no time, Xianxia denied these thoughts of his. He and the tiny vortex were a single whole. If he didn't absorb profound energy, then the tiny vortex would be unable to absorb profound energy. They could be said to be bound together for good or bad, and he didn't believe that the tiny vortex wouldn't bite the hand that feeds it. After going silent for a moment, Xianxia withdrew an energy stone and started absorbing it because he wanted to see what the tiny vortex was doing. After 15 minutes passed, 200 energy stones were gone, and the tiny vortex was still absorbing. 1 hour later, 800 energy stones were gone, yet the tiny vortex was still absorbing, and it was absorbing at an even quicker rate. Just like this, after 6 hours passed, the tiny vortex was still absorbing, and it didn't show any signs of stopping or giving him some light golden profound energy. On the other hand, Xianxia seemed as if he was going to fight the tiny vortex until the end, and he ceaselessly withdrew energy stone after energy stone. In these few hours of time, the tiny vortex had already absorbed a few thousands of energy stones. As he watched the energy stones vanish, Xianxia's heart hurt slightly. Luckily, Bauer had given him over 100,000 energy stones. Otherwise, he wouldn't allow the tiny vortex to absorb the energy stones like this no matter what. Just like this, Xianxia sat here from day until night, and numerous energy stones vanished. However, the tiny vortex seemed like a bottomless hole, and over 10,000 energy stones were still unable to satisfy the tiny vortex. In the blink of an eye, Xianxia had continued sitting here from the night until the day, and in this time of a day and night, 20,000 energy stones had vanished. As he watched these energy stones vanish bit by bit, Xianxia wanted to stop on many occasions, but he couldn't, because he had to figure the tiny vortex out. Otherwise, not to mention the battle on the life and death arena with Lu Qingyu 3 months from now, he would even be eliminated from the outer court exam that was being held over 20 days from now. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed, and half of the energy stones Bauer gave him had been consumed. At this moment, Xianxia was already numb to it, and it had aroused his ferocity. Because in any case, he was going to fight the tiny vortex until the end. At a certain moment at noon on the 3rd day, Xianxia's hand that held the energy stones paused for a moment, and he immersed his mind into his body. When he saw the dantian within his body, Xianxia's eyes instantly opened wide, and his face was covered in disbelief. Xianxia had just immersed his mind into his body when he noticed that the tiny vortex was sending strands of golden profound energy to his normal dantian at this moment. Yes, it was golden profound energy, completely golden profound energy, and it wasn't just light golden as it was in the past. This golden profound energy surged violently and madly like torrents from within the tiny vortex, and then they flowed into his dantian. In next to no time, his normal dantian was full, yet the tiny vortex didn't stop, and golden profound energy still surged ceaselessly from it. These strands of golden profound energy pushed ceaselessly towards the meridians within his entire body in the end. At this moment, Xianxia's entire body, including the meridians throughout his body, were filled with golden profound energy. To Xianxia's shock, these strands of golden profound energy actually fused directly into his body in the end, and strand after strand of golden profound energy fused ceaselessly into his body. After around 15 minutes like this, the tiny vortex slowly came to a stop. When he sensed the tiny vortex had stopped, Xianxia hurriedly pulled his clothes off, and he was stunned on the spot as soon as he took a look. His entire body was suffused with a light golden color at this moment, and when his palms swept lightly past his chest, it felt hard like dark iron. Yang Yi gulped and said in a low voice, "Perfection in the body refinement technique?" The body refinement technique was a basic cultivation technique of the sword sect, and it had a total of 7 levels. Usually, there was rarely anyone that cultivated it, and even if someone did cultivate it, they would change to a different cultivation technique as soon as they became a profounder. So, Yang Yi was absolutely the first person to cultivate it to the 7th level. Since my body refinement technique has attained the 7th level, then doesn't that mean I'm at the 7th rank of the mortal realm already? When he thought up to hear, Yang Yi hurriedly senses the state within his body. After a short moment, his eyes opened wide while his face was covered in excitement. And he said, "I never expected that I would actually directly attain the 7th rank of the mortal realm." At this moment, Yang Yi was really shocked in his heart. It had been less than a month since he'd noticed the tiny vortex. However, it was precisely within this month that he who wasn't a profounder before this had directly attained the 7th rank of the mortal realm. Was this normal? When he thought up to here, Yang Yi felt slightly uneasy in his heart. At this moment, no matter how stupid he was aware that this tiny vortex was definitely not an ordinary dantian. Especially the golden profound energy, it didn't just improve his strength, it was even able to strengthen the sword techniques he executed. He'd never seen the gold element profound energy from amongst the profound energy of the 5 elements, but he dared to confirm that the gold element profound energy was absolutely not as strong as his golden profound energy. After staying silent for a moment, Yang Yi immersed his mind into his body, and when he saw the situation within the tiny vortex, he suddenly stood up while his eyes opened wide. He muttered in a low voice, "How could this be possible? How could this be possible?" Yang Yi gulped as he suppressed the shock in his heart, and he immersed his heart into the tiny vortex within his body once more. At this moment, the space within the tiny vortex had enlarged. Yes, it had enlarged. The tiny vortex was originally the same size as his normal dantian, but at this moment even 40 or 50 middle-aged men could stand in the space within the tiny vortex. Moreover, there was something like a bathing pool at the center of the tiny vortex, and it was completely filled with golden profound energy. Yang Yi was aware that spatial rings had a space of their own within them because he was wearing one right now. However, the tiny vortex within his body actually had a space of its own as well. What's going on? Besides feeling shocked, Yang Yi was bewildered. He really wanted to find someone and ask exactly what was going on, but he couldn't, because he wasn't stupid, and he knew that if others found out that the tiny vortex could convert profound energy and had a space of its own, then it would definitely draw calamity to him. After a long time, Yang Yi took a deep breath, and he decided to stop paying any attention to the tiny vortex. No matter how mysterious or heaven-defying the tiny vortex was, it was within his body in the end, and it had to rely on him absorbing profound energy in order to become larger. At this moment, he'd already come to an understanding that the tiny vortex had probably enlarged because of the contribution of the energy stones from before. Moreover, no matter what, the tiny vortex hadn't revealed any hostility towards him, and it had even helped him improve his strength. So, instead of guessing the tiny vortex's origins, wouldn't it be better to use the tiny vortex properly to improve his strength? After he figured all of this out, Yang Ye's mind suddenly became clear. He seemed to have thought of something, and he lowered his head to look at his body that was suffused with light golden radiance. After that, he hesitated for a moment, and then he held the dark iron sword in his hand and stabbed it towards his left chest. Ding! The dark iron sword struck his body, yet it seemed like it had struck dark iron instead, and it instantly caused a light sound of metal colliding to resound. Ha ha! As he sensed the hardness of his body, Yang Yi started roaring with laughter, and he seemed to be slightly complacent. After a short moment, he said in a low voice, "I never expected that my body would actually be so strong after it was cleansed by the golden profound energy. At this moment, the strength of my body is probably extremely strong. Let me give it a try." He acted as soon as he thought about it. Yang Yi walked over to an enormous tree. This tree before him was called an ironshell tree. Its skin had numerous lumps on it, and it was extremely hard. Usually, when the labor disciples chopped trees, they would directly give up when they saw this type of tree because it was too hard, and it was utterly impossible for them to chop it down. As he gazed at this iron shell skin before him that required a few people in order to embrace it completely, Xianxia took a deep breath while he gradually clenched his right fist tightly. After a short moment of silence, Xianxia shouted in a low voice, and then his right hand smashed down towards the enormous tree before him. Bang! Xianxia's fist was like a sharp blade slicing into rotting wood, and his entire fist entered into the iron shell tree without facing any obstruction at all. At a certain moment in time, Xianxia's right arm suddenly shook once more, and energy sprayed out from his fist. Bang! The iron shell tree instantly exploded, causing countless bits of wood to shoot towards the surroundings. Xianxia withdrew his fist, and he said in a low voice while he gazed at the iron shell tree that had been blasted into pieces by a single punch from him, "I never expected that my strength is already so formidable. This fist definitely possessed no less than 1,500 kilograms of strength. If I utilize a strength talisman, then my strength would be even more terrifying than a dark beast." When he thought about how his strength would be comparable to a dark beast, Xianxia's eyes flickered with the glow of excitement. But in next to no time he calmed down because he thought of a person, Lu Qingyu, that person that was ranked at the 29th position on the outer court rankings. Even though Lu Qingyu didn't come looking for trouble with him now, Xianxia was clearly aware that Lu Qingyu would come. Moreover, even if Lu Qingyu didn't come looking for trouble with him, he would look for trouble with Lu Qingyu. The Lu clan and Xianxia could absolutely not coexist. With my current strength, it's probably quite difficult to defeat Lu Qingyu, who's on the outer court rankings. Looks like I have to head to the Grand Myriad Mountains to gain experiences between life and death, Xianxia muttered in a low voice. At this moment, his strength had improved greatly, but compared to those geniuses on the outer court rankings, it was still slightly insufficient because some geniuses on the outer court rankings were even able to go against the outer court elders. It's time to head to the Grand Myriad Mountains. Xianxia clenched his fists tightly. This time, he'd decided that only by experiencing tempering between moments of life and death would he be able to become stronger. No matter if it was for the sake of the outer court exam occurring over 20 days from now or because of the pressure the Lu clan brought to him, he needed to possess formidable strength. The Grand Myriad Mountains could be said to be a restricted area to humans because it was the territory of dark beasts. There were countless formidable dark beasts there, and humans that ventured there would definitely never return. Of course, this referred to the depths of the Grand Myriad Mountains. There were still numerous humans in the outer area of the Grand Myriad Mountains, and amongst these people were mercenaries, independent cultivators searching for treasures, and disciples of various sects. The disciples of the Sword Sect occupied the greatest number amongst these people because the Sword Sect was the closest to the Grand Myriad Mountains. The Sword Sect encouraged its disciples to temper themselves in the Grand Myriad Mountains. After all, only experiencing battles of life and death would allow one to truly become an expert. However, out of consideration for the level of danger in the Grand Myriad Mountains, the Sword Sect ruled that only experts at the 9th rank of the mortal realm could head to the Grand Myriad Mountains to temper themselves or accept assignments that required heading to the Grand Myriad Mountains. This rule was naturally not restrictive to Xianxia because he still wasn't a disciple of the Sword Sect yet. On the following day, Xianxia crafted 5 strength talismans. All these 5 strength talismans were high-grade talismans, and this caused Xianxia to be slightly surprised. On the second day, Xianxia departed at daybreak. After traveling throughout the morning, Xianxia finally arrived at the border of the Grand Myriad Mountains. There were a few small groups scattered around the border, and these groups were all mercenaries that specialized in heading into the Grand Myriad Mountains to hunt and kill dark beasts to be sold. They were a group of people that lived on the edge. Xianxia glanced at these people in the surroundings before he withdrew his gaze, and then he shot his gaze towards an expanse of forest in the distance. As he gazed at the dense forest there, Xianxia's expression became slightly heavy, and he said, "That's probably Snake Forest, and entering Snake Forest is equivalent to truly entering the Grand Myriad Mountains." Right when Xianxia was observing the surroundings, a rugged man walked over to his side and asked, "Young brother, are you going into the Grand Myriad Mountains?" Xianxia turned around and noticed a rugged man smiling at him. The man was around 30 years old. He had dense brows, large eyes, and dark skin. Xianxia's gaze descended onto the man's shoulder in the end because the man was carrying a large saber on his shoulder. The saber was extremely large, and it was at least a few hundreds of kilograms in weight. After his gaze stopped on the man's shoulder for a moment, Yang Yi nodded lightly. When he saw Yang Yi nod, the rugged man roared with laughter and said, "Young brother, you're probably by yourself. Since it's like that, why don't you go with us? Our group just happens to lack a member. What do you think?" As he spoke, he pointed towards a few people that weren't too far away. Yang Yi looked along the direction the man's finger pointed at and noticed a few people that were standing ahead. He hesitated for a moment before he nodded. He just arrived here and didn't know anything about the Grand Myriad Mountains, so it would definitely be beneficial to go along with some mercenaries and get familiar with this place. When he saw Yang Yi nod, the rugged man roared with laughter. With his perception, he was able to determine with a single glance that Yang Yi was probably a disciple of a sect that had come to temper himself. Moreover, Yang Yi held a sword in his hand, so he was probably a disciple of the sword sect. Thus, he was naturally happy to have a disciple of the sword sect join them. The rugged man introduced himself. "Young brother, I'm Manzi, and I'm the leader of this group. There are a total of 4 people including me in our group. Now, with you joining us, it'll be 5 people. Yang Yi." Yang Yi smiled as he nodded. He had a slightly good impression of this frank man that stood before him. Manzi led Yang Yi to his group. Manzi's group was made up of 3 men and 1 woman. Manzi pointed with his right hand at the only woman and said, "Young brother, this is my younger sister, Qing Hong. She's at the 9th rank of the mortal realm." When he looked along the direction Manzi pointed and saw the woman, Yang Yi was slightly astounded. The woman was around 20 years ago, and her dressing was extremely revealing. She wore a very short beast skin wrapped around her chest, whereas her cream-colored stomach was revealed beneath her chest. It was even to the extent that her belly button was fully revealed. As for her lower body, she wore a short skin skirt that revealed a pair of slender and long pure white legs. A black-colored dark iron longbow hung on the woman's right shoulder, and she seemed to be extremely valiant and heroic. The woman nodded lightly, and then Yang Yi withdrew his gaze. Even though the woman was beautiful, it was enough to just admire her beauty for a moment, and it would be slightly rude to continue staring. Qing Hong nodded amiably to Yang Yi because Yang Yi hadn't revealed that sort of gaze towards her like others did, and this caused her to arouse a trace of a good impression of Yang Yi. Manzi pointed at a man at the side who was around 25 years old, and he said, "Xiao He. He's at the peak of the 9th rank of the mortal realm, and he utilizes a dagger. He's our group's main attacker." The man called Xiao He obviously didn't like to talk, and he just nodded to Yang Yi. After that, he continued playing with the pitch-black dagger in his hand. Manzi pointed at the last man and said, "Xiao Yuan, he utilizes a sword as well, and he's at the peak of the 9th rank of the mortal realm. He has the best chance amongst all of us to become a first heaven realm expert." When he heard this, Yang Yi looked at the last man. The last man was around 23 years old, and he had a slightly handsome appearance. However, he revealed quite undisguised arrogance on his face. Moreover, Yang Yi even sensed that this man's gaze towards him faintly carries a strand of vigilance. Yang Yi glanced at Qing Hong and then seemed to be lost in thought. After that, he nodded before withdrawing his gaze because he didn't want to care about all this nonsense. "Young brother, what rank are you at in the mortal realm?" Meanwhile, Xiao Yuan looked at Yang Yi and seemed to ask casually. When they heard him, the others looked at Yang Yi as well because since Yang Yi dared to come to Grand Myriad Mountains at such a young age, his strength would definitely not be weak. "The 7th rank of the mortal realm." Yang Yi nodded and spoke truthfully. "The 7th rank of the mortal realm?" All of them were stunned when they heard Yang Yi, and even Manzi's eyes revealed slight astonishment. According to their expectations, since Yang Yi came to the Grand Myriad Mountains at such a young age and used a sword, he ought to be a disciple of the Sword Sect, and the disciples of the Sword Sect had to be at the 9th rank of the mortal realm before they could leave the sect to temper themselves. "You aren't a disciple of the Sword Sect?" Xiao Yuan was astounded. Yang Yi shook his head. At this moment, he really couldn't be considered as a disciple of the Sword Sect because labor disciples weren't considered within the scope of being disciples. When he saw Yang Yi shake his head, Xiao Yuan laughed with ridicule while a mocking smile curled up on the corners of his mouth. Moreover, his attitude instantly took a 360-degree turn as he said, "Kid, you're only at the 7th rank of the mortal realm, so you're courting death by entering the Grand Myriad Mountains. It's better for you to cultivate for a few years before coming back." Manzi hesitated before he said in a light voice, "Young brother, the Grand Myriad Mountains are filled with danger, and it's truly slightly dangerous to enter it with your strength." He'd originally thought Yang Yi was a disciple of the Sword Sect, yet he'd never expected that he'd made a mistake. Yang Yi smiled and said, "It's fine. I'll just go with all of you through Snake Forest, and I'll leave after we pass through Snake Forest." "That won't do." At this moment, Xiao Yuan said in a deep voice, "Every single one of us are 9th rank mortal realm experts, and all of us are able to protect ourselves in there. If someone at the 7th rank of the mortal realm like you follows us, then you'll burden our entire group. Go back from where you came." "Xiao Yuan." Qing Hong frowned while she revealed a displeased expression and said, "It's already really good that he was able to attain the 7th rank of the mortal realm at such an age. You weren't even at the 5th rank of the mortal realm when you were around 16 or 17, right? So why speak so offensively?" She was frank by nature and spoke everything on her mind. Moreover, she had a slightly good impression of Yang Yi, so she was slightly unable to continue watching as Xiao Yuan ridiculed Yang Yi like that. Xiao Yuan's expression turned slightly unsightly when he saw Qing Hong speak on Yang Ye's behalf, and he said, "Qing Hong, we're a group, so why speak on behalf of an outsider? Moreover, his strength is weak, and keeping such a burden would only drag us down." His words were frank, and he paid no regard to Yang Yi who stood at the side. Manzi and Xiao He went silent when they heard this. Even though Xiao Yuan's words were unpleasant, they had the same thoughts in their minds at this moment. Qing Hong glanced at Xiao Yuan before she looked at Yang Yi that had been keeping silent since the beginning, and then she sighed lightly and said, "Young brother, it's dangerous for you to enter the Grand Myriad Mountains with your current strength. Why don't you go with us and help us clean up the battlefield, and we'll give you some gold coins after we leave the mountains and sell our gains. However, this will be quite a small amount of gold coins. What do you think?" As far as she was concerned, since Yang Yi had come to the Grand Myriad Mountains to hunt and kill dark beasts at such a young age, then he definitely urgently required wealth. Otherwise, it would be impossible for someone to head to the Grand Myriad Mountains while still at the 7th rank of the mortal realm. Yang Yi glanced indifferently at Xiao Yuan before he looked at Qing Hong who spoke on his behalf. As he gazed at this kind woman, Yang Yi had a slight good impression of her, and he immediately nodded with a smile and said, "All right, I'll help all of you clean up the battlefield." When he saw Yang Yi agree to clean up the battlefield, the disdain on Xiao Yuan's face grew deeper. He looked down on such a person, yet he didn't say anything because they did indeed require someone to clean the battlefield, and it wouldn't be bad to have an assistant. Manzi nodded and said, "Since it's like that, then let's head in. Brother Yang, you follow behind us and don't go too far." As he spoke, he led the way towards Snake Forest. On the way, Qing Hong walked by Yang Ye's side. She turned her head to look at Yang Yi who remained silent, and she said because she thought that Yang Yi was angry, "Little fellow, don't be angry. Besides being one that cares about strength and power, Xiao Yuan isn't a bad person. So, don't take his words to heart." Yang Yi was stunned when he heard this, and then he shook his head and smiled before he said, "I didn't take his words seriously. However, I have to thank big sister Qing Hong." Yang Yi had a slightly good impression of this woman by his side that had constantly spoken on his behalf. As for Xiao Yuan, he didn't take such a person seriously at all. Even though Xiao Yuan was at the peak of the 9th rank of the mortal realm, he wasn't afraid of Xiao Yuan at all. "That's good." Qing Hong smiled and said, "Follow behind us later, and you must be careful. The snake forest is filled with snakes, and a great deal of them reside on the trees. The slightest carelessness will cause you to suffer a surprise attack." "Aren't all of you hunting dark beasts in Snake Forest?" Yang Yi asked curiously. Qing Hong shook her head and said, "No, Snake Forest is mostly filled with low-rank dark beasts, and they don't possess inner cores. So, They're not worth much money at all. Our objective is a place called Nether Wolf Gorge outside the snake forest. The nether wolves there are at a high rank and they possess inner cores. Moreover, the skin of those nether wolves are extremely valuable. Then around how much are all of you able to earn from a trip to the Grand Myriad Mountains? Yang Yi was slightly interested in the lives of these mercenaries. If our luck is good, then around 5 or 6,000 gold coins. Qing Hong replied, if our luck isn't good, then 1 or 2,000, and it's even to the extent that someone might perish. Our group originally possessed 5 members, but he perished when we hunted a ground bear in the Grand Myriad Mountains that day. When she spoke up to hear, Qing Hong's beautiful face dimmed down slightly. When he saw Qing Hong's expression dim down, Yang Yi changed the topic and said, Big Sister Qing Hong, do you know the value of talismans crafted by talisman masters? He was aware in the past that talismans were extremely expensive, yet he didn't know the rough number. Talismans? Qing Hong was moved when she heard this word. Amongst ordinary 5-element talismans, low-grade talismans are worth 10,000 gold coins, mid-grade talismans around 30,000 gold coins, whereas high-grade talismans are basically impossible to be purchased normally. They only exist in some large-scale auctions, and as for the price, if the auction house does well in making the bids rise, then over 100,000 or even more would be possible. Over 100,000. Yang Ye's eyelids twitched when he heard this number. Now, he finally understood why Bauer was so wealthy. That little girl possessed so many talismans, and casually selling a few of them would be sufficient for an ordinary person to feed himself for his entire lifetime. We've entered the snake forest. Follow by my side and don't get too far away from me. As soon as they entered Snake Forest, Qing Hong pulled Yang Yi over to her side and spoke with a solemn expression. After walking for a long time in Snake Forest, the forest grew darker and darker. Yang Yi sized up the surroundings carefully, and he noticed the surroundings were covered in towering ancient trees that rose straight into the sky and their branches and leaves were interweaved together tightly. A few strands of sunlight were only able to pass through some places that weren't so tightly packed with leaves. During this period of time, some small snakes occasionally launched surprise attacks against them from the treetop. However, these small snakes didn't cause any trouble for them, and their group dealt with the small snakes with extreme ease. Yang Yi didn't fight during this period of time because Qing Hong was constantly following by his side. Once a snake suddenly launched an attack, she would deal with them by herself, and Yang Yi didn't have the chance to make a move at all. It was exactly because of this that Yang Yi was constantly ridiculed by Xiao Yuan during this period of time. Yang Yi followed this group for a few hours, and he obtained a rough understanding of the strengths of independent cultivators and disciples from a sect. When independent cultivators were compared with disciples from a sect, the gap was slightly big. Because disciples from a sect possessed cultivation resources like techniques and treasures, whereas if the 4 independent cultivators before him were taken as an example, then besides Xiao Yuan's weapon being a low-grade yellow rank sword, the weapons of the others weren't graded at all. Moreover, the 4 of them didn't possess any proper techniques, and they mostly relied on brute force to fight. As for Xiao Yuan's disdain and ridicule, Yang Yi completely disregarded it. Even though Xiao Yuan was at the 9th rank of the mortal realm, Yang Yi didn't take him seriously at all. According to Yang Ye's estimation, even Duan Jun whom he'd crippled would be able to deal with Xiao Yuan. The gap between the disciples of a sect and independent cultivators was truly huge. As they went deeper into Snake Forest, the number of snakes residing on the trees grew more and more numerous in number. In the end, they were assaulted by all sorts of snakes with every 10+ meters of distance they covered. Qing Hong held the dagger in her hand as it flashed past from above Yang Yi, and a small snake was instantly split into 2 and fell to the ground. After she killed the small snake with a single strike, Qing Hong patted Yang Yi on the head and said, "Didn't I say that you should always follow behind me? Even though this small snake's cultivation isn't high, it contains venomous poison, and it'll be extremely troublesome if you're bitten by it." Yang Yi rubbed his nose when he heard this, and he was slightly amused, because even if he stood there and allowed those small snakes to bite him, they would probably be unable to bit through his skin. However, Yang Yi was still moved by the woman's concern. They'd only met by chance, Yet this woman before him had taken care of him on many occasions, and this caused his heart to feel slightly warm. Bang! Right at this moment, a large python that had 2 wings on its back suddenly descended not too far ahead from them. The body of the python was even larger than the colossal python King Xianxia had killed that day, and its entire body was dark black while its body was covered in scales that seemed like dark iron. Moreover, the python had a pair of pitch-black wings. This python didn't attack Xianxia and the others. It just obstructed their path, and its enormous eyes stared at them while emanating a ferocious glow. That's an 8-rank twin-wing python. Watch out, everyone. When he saw this twin-wing python suddenly appear, the profound energy within Manzi's body surged, and his expression became solemn while he immediately warned the others. At the same time, Xiao Yuan and Xiao He hurriedly moved a few meters towards both sides, and they gazed at the twin-wing python with vigilance. Qing Hong, who stood by Yang Ye's side, had hurriedly pulled down the longbow from her shoulder and knocked an arrow before aiming it at the twin-wing python in the distance. Manzi, kill it. The inner core of this twin-wing python can be sold for 5,000 gold coins at least. Moreover, its skin can definitely be sold for 1,000 gold coins at least. What do you think? Meanwhile, Xiao Yuan's eyes flickered with the glow of greed as he asked in a low voice. Manzi's eyes flashed with a wisp of greed as well when he heard this, and he hesitated for a moment before he nodded and said, "The 3 of us will attack it jointly from 3 directions. Qing Hong, you assist us with your bow and arrow. Attack!" As soon as he finished speaking, Manzi, Xiao He, and Xiao Yuan instantly charged at the twin-wing python because a dark beast that was all alone by itself was their favorite. Qing Hong, who stood by Yang Ye's side, stared fixedly at the twin-wing python instead. Yet the arrow within her hand wasn't released. She was waiting for an opportunity, a lethal opportunity. Otherwise, her arrow would be utterly unable to pierce the defenses of the twin-wing python. Their targets were originally those dark beasts at the 6th or 7th rank because they were able to deal with dark beasts at these ranks of cultivation. As for a dark beast at the 8th rank, they usually fled immediately upon encountering one. Because the defenses of an 8th rank dark beast was truly too formidable, and these dark beasts frequently formed groups. However, an 8th-rank dark beast that was alone had appeared before them, and they were tempted by it. When it saw them charge at it, the twin-wing python seemed to be slightly furious. Its jade-green eyes emanated a ferocious glow while its large wings suddenly flapped towards the grounds. A gale of strong wind instantly sprayed out and enveloped down towards the 3 of them that were led by Manzi. All 3 of them were shocked when the gale arose, and they hurriedly circulated their profound energy into their weapons before slashing at the gale. In next to no time, the 3 of them had broken through the gale and approached the twin-wing python. They seemed to be extremely experienced, and they didn't fight it head-on. They ceaselessly dodged the twin-wing python's tail and the liquid sprayed from its mouth. Moreover, every single time the twin-wing python pounced towards the 3 of them, an arrow that carried profound energy would whistle over, causing the twin-wing python to have no choice but to abandon its attack. For a time, the 4 of them fought the twin-wing python equally. As he watched the battle, Xianxia shook his head in his heart. Their cooperation wasn't bad at all, but their combat strengths were truly too weak. The 3 of them seemed to have occupied an advantageous position as they fought the twin-wing python while moving around it, but they were utterly unable to cause any injury to it. Moreover, once the twin-wing python struck any one of them, then even if that person didn't die, it would still cause a heavy injury. Moreover, once one of them was injured, the other 2 would be in danger. When he had the 3 of them as a point of comparison, Xianxia finally noticed how formidable he was to be able to kill that 6th-rank dark beast, the colossal python king, on that day. Because he'd utilized his fists to break through that dark beast's defenses. This won't do. This twin-wing python's defenses are truly too formidable. The 3 of us are utterly unable to defeat it. As he gazed at the sparks caused by his sword striking the twin-wing python, Xiao Yuan's eyes flickered as he contemplated in his heart. It wasn't just Xiao Yuan who had such thoughts at this moment, and even Manzi and Xiao He had similar thoughts. In the beginning, they thought that with their strengths, the 4 of them would be able to deal with this 8-rank dark beast. But now they noticed that the 4 of them were utterly unable to even break through its defenses. Looks like it isn't easy to be a mercenary. Xianxia spoke in a low voice as he watched them fight bitterly. Right when he intended to head over and lend a hand, an unexpected event occurred abruptly. Xiao Yuan, who was originally in charge of the right, had seized the opportunity presented to him when the twin-wing python attacked Manzi, and he suddenly retreated swiftly. Xiao Yuan retreated extremely swiftly, and he'd left the battlefield in practically an instant. After that, he turned around and vanished within the forest with a few leaps. How shameless! Xiao Yuan's sudden departure caused the other three to be instantly exasperated. Qing Hong's beautiful face flushed red from anger, and she had the intention to shoot an arrow at Xiao Yuan. However, when she noticed the twin-wing python attacked Manzi ferociously, she could only immediately abandon this thought and swiftly release numerous arrows at the twin-wing python. As he watched Xiao Yuan flee, Xianxia shook his head in secret. He originally thought that Xiao Yuan was just slightly arrogant, yet he'd never expected that Xiao Yuan cowardly and afraid of death to the point of directly abandoning his companions and fleeing for his life. With Xiao Yuan's sudden departure and the loss of someone to pin the twin-wing python from the right, the pressure Manzi and Xiao He felt instantly increased by a few times. However, the two of them didn't choose to retreat because once one of them did retreat, then the last remaining person would absolutely die. Xianxia, leave quickly. Meanwhile, Qing Hong turned around to roar loudly at Xianxia. After that, she turned around and drew her bowstring before releasing numerous arrows at the twin-wing python. She was definitely unable to leave because once she did, then Manzi and Xiao He would definitely perish without her pinning the twin-wing python down from afar. Xiangxia's heart felt warm when he heard Qing Hong because even at this moment, this woman before him was still thinking about him. Xianxia clenched the dark iron sword in his hand, and right when he was about to make a move, another unexpected event occurred. One of the arrows Qing Hong shot whistled through the air and directly entered the twin-wing python's right eye. Hiss! The intense pain it suffered from this caused the twin-wing python to instantly go berserk, and its enormous body twisted about madly on the ground. It stopped paying attention to Manzi and Xiao He, and its enormous wings suddenly flapped and caused an enormous gale to arise as it pounced towards Qing Hong, who was still knocking arrows on her bowstring. When she noticed the twin-wing python instantly pounced towards her, Qing Hong's countenance immediately turned ghastly pale. The twin-wing python was swift like a bolt of lightning, and it practically arrived before Qing Hong in less than a few breaths of time. After that, its enormous mouth opened wide before its bloody mouth bit downwards towards Qing Hong. No! When he saw the twin-wing python's mouth bite towards Qing Hong, Manzi was utterly horrified, and he roared hysterically with rage while charging madly at the twin-wing python. Right when Qing Hong was stunned on the spot, Xiangxia's figure flashed to appear before Qing Hong. Clang! The dark iron sword left its sheath and swiftly slashed at the twin-wing python that was right before him. Instantly, a strand of golden sword chi shot out violently from the tip of the dark iron sword, and it instantly struck the twin-wing python's head. Bang! At this moment, the extremely hard scales of the twin-wing python seemed like rotten wood that were instantly broken apart by that strand of golden sword chi from Xianxia. The twin-wing python's enormous figure was split into two, and it crashed to the ground and caused dust and dirt to suffuse the air. When they witnessed this scene, Manzi and Xiao He that were charging over from the side had stopped on the spot. Both their eyes stared blankly at the 8-rank twin-wing python that had been slashed into two, and then they glanced at Xianxia, who stood with sword in hand. They were unable to recover from their shock for a long time. Qing Hong, who stood behind Xianxia, was the first to recover from her shock, and her beautiful eyes flickered with a strange glow as she gazed at Xiangxia's seemingly thin figure from behind. That scene from before was too shocking. Actually, it wasn't just Qing Hong and the others that were shocked. Even Xianxia himself was slightly shocked. He knew that his golden profound energy was formidable. After all, it could actually break through the defenses of an 8-rank dark beast while it was still light gold in color. However, he'd never expected that this golden profound energy would actually be so terrifying, and it slashed the twin-wing python into two with a single strike. After briefly pondering about it, Xianxia had come to a rough understanding. It was undeniable that the might of the profound energy within his body had become even more formidable after it transformed, but it ought to be the contribution of the energy split sword technique that allowed him to split the twin-wing python into two. Otherwise, if he attacked with an ordinary method, then even though he would be able to break through the twin-wing python's defenses, it would definitely not be so terrifying. Brother Yang, you're a disciple of the sword sect, right? Meanwhile, Manzi and Xiao He had walked over to Yang Ye's side, and Manzi gazed at Yang Yi as he smiled bitterly and spoke. That scene from before was truly too shocking. All four of them who were at the 9th rank of the mortal realm were unable to break through the twin-wing python's defenses. Yet this profounder at the 7th rank of the mortal realm standing before them was actually able to split the twin-wing python into two with a single sword strike. Needless to say, this was quite a blow to their confidence. Yang Yi put the dark iron sword away and shook his head before he said indifferently, I'm not a disciple of the sword sect. Yes, I'm still not considered as one for now. He didn't have much of a good impression of these two men before him. Earlier, when he said that he was at the 7th rank of the mortal realm, even though Manzi's attitude wasn't so terrible as Xiao Yuan, the cold attitude he revealed was extremely obvious. Manzi felt slightly embarrassed when he heard Yang Ye's cold and indifferent tone. He knew that Xiao Yuan and his attitudes towards Yang Yi earlier had caused Yang Yi to not have a good impression of him. When he thought up to here, Manzi couldn't help but laugh bitterly because he'd allowed such an opportunity to become acquainted with an expert to slip him by. Manzi laughed bitterly and sighed before he glanced at the twin-wing python on the ground, and then he said, Brother Yang, this twin-wing python before him had been killed by Yang Yi, so it ought to belong to Yang Yi, because they'd only asked Yang Yi to clean up the battlefield for them, and they didn't allow Yang Yi to join their group, so there was no agreement between them to share their gains equally. When he thought up to here, the regret in Manzi's heart grew even deeper. Yang Yi glanced at the twin-wing python and pondered deeply for a moment before he said, If there's an inner core, then give it to me, and all of you can have the rest. Yang Yi definitely didn't need money now, and the reason he wanted the inner core was that he was curious and had never seen an inner core in the past. Manzi was delighted in his heart upon hearing Yang Yi. He originally thought that they wouldn't get a share of this twin-wing python, yet he'd never expected that Yang Yi only wanted the inner core. After all, besides the inner core, the twin-wing python skin was extremely valuable as well, and it could be considered as a great gain to the three of them. After they thanked Yang Yi, Manzi and Xiao He hurriedly started to dissect the twin-wing python. Yang Yi paid no attention to Manzi and Xiao He, and he turned around to look at Qinghong instead. He really had quite a good impression of this sexy and likable woman. He walked over slowly to her side, and when he noticed Qinghong looking at him as if she was looking at a monster, he couldn't help but rub his nose as he said with a smile, What are you looking at me like that for? Qinghong withdrew her gaze and shook her head, and then she laughed bitterly and said, I never imagined that you're actually so strong. It was I who was meddlesome earlier. Qinghong recalled how she'd repeatedly instructed Yang Yi not to leave her side before this, and her beautiful face couldn't help but flush red. I intended to make a move, but you never allowed me to. So you can't blame me for that. Yang Yi shrugged and smiled. Qinghong's face flushed even redder when she heard Yang Yi, and she glared at him before she said, Yes, I was meddlesome. As she spoke, she walked over towards Manzi and Xiao He, and she felt slightly aggrieved when she thought about how Yang Yi might be ridiculing her in his heart for overestimating her strength earlier. When he noticed Qinghong seemed to be slightly angry, Yang Yi hurriedly stood in Qinghong's path and said in a serious manner, Big sister Qinghong, don't be angry. I truly thank you for what you did before this, and I have no intention of ridiculing you. I really took you to be a friend. When she noticed Yang Ye's serious expression, Qinghong's expression eased up. After that, she glanced at Yang Yi, and she blushed when she recalled her behavior from before. She said in her heart, What's wrong with me? I actually cared so much about his opinion. Qinghong seemed to have thought of something, and her face turned even redder. However, after some time, she shook her head in her heart. When he saw Qinghong's face blush and reveal a shy appearance, Yang Ye's eyelids twitched while his heartbeat sped up as well. Qinghong could be said to be the most beautiful woman he's laid eyes upon until now. her beautiful face, slender figure, and especially that ample chest that fully filled the beast's skin she wore and seemed as if it was about to burst out from beneath the beast's skin. Yang Ye's gaze moved down and descended onto Qing Hong's exposed waist. Perhaps it was because she hunted dark beasts all year round. Her skin wasn't snow white like an ordinary woman, and it was a healthy cream color. Of course, her skin wasn't the main point. The main point was the charm of Qing Hong's waist. Her waist didn't have a trace of excess flesh. It was flat and smooth, and one didn't have to touch it to sense how soft it was. A gorgeous and charming appearance, an ample chest, a slender and fine curvaceous body, and coupled with that set of beast skin top and skirt, Qing Hong's entire body revealed a heroic and mature charm. Earlier, he didn't have any other thoughts about this beautiful woman, Qing Hong, nor had he observed her in detail. However, her kind actions from before had truly caused him to have a very good impression of her, and in his heart, Qing Hong was a person that could be his friend. Yet now, after he observed Qing Hong from nearby, he noticed that this person who could be his friend was truly extremely beautiful and tempting. When she noticed Yang Yi staring at her, Qing Hong's expression instantly became slightly unnatural. She seemed to have thought of something, causing her eyeballs to spin while she revealed a charming smile and said, "Is big sister Qing Hong beautiful?" When he heard this, Yang Yi, who was admiring Qing Hong's graceful figure, had nodded instinctively. He just nodded when his heart jerked, and then he looked at Qing Hong and noticed she was looking at him with a spurious smile. Yang Ye's face turned red, and he rubbed his nose in embarrassment. He was just about to say something when Manzi and Xiao He arrived before Yang Yi, and Manzi withdrew a white pinky-sized pearl and passed it to Yang Yi before he said, "Brother Yang, this is that twin-wing python's inner core." After he received the white pearl, Yang Yi observed it carefully. The inner core was extremely small and completely pure white. Moreover, it emanated a strand of light energy fluctuations. "What are the uses of this inner core?" Yang Yi asked while gazing at the inner core in his hand. Manzi smiled and said, "Inner cores have quite a bit of uses. They can be utilized to craft medicinal pills, and they can be fed to dark beasts. Of course, their greatest use is to be embedded in treasures. Of course, this required a talisman master to inscribe a formation on the treasure." Yang Ye's eyelids twitched when he heard this. He'd never expected that the inner core could be used for that, and he placed it behind the clothes at his chest before he asked, "Right, all of you frequently hunt dark beasts in the Grand Myriad Mountains, so you ought to be comparatively familiar with the area in this Grand Myriad Mountains, right?" Manzi nodded and said, "We're comparatively familiar with this area of 500 kilometers, but we don't know anything about the area that exceeds this scope. Even some formidable mercenary groups don't dare to go there because the dark beasts there are mostly already beast kings or even stronger." Beast kings. Yang Ye's expression became slightly solemn when he heard this. A beast king was comparable to a first heaven realm expert amongst humans, but its combat strength absolutely surpassed a human expert at the first heaven realm. After staying silent for a while, Yang Yi asked, "How long more before we'll leave Snake Forest?" Yang Yi had already decided to look for some formidable dark beasts to fight because only battles with such dark beasts would allow his strength to improve, and he urgently required strength now. Manzi raised his head to determine the time, and then he said, "We'll only be able to leave Snake Forest tomorrow, and we have to rest a night in Snake Forest today." "Rest in Snake Forest?" Yang Yi was stunned, and he said, "There are so many snakes in Snake Forest. Is it safe to rest here?" "Stupid." Qing Hong rolled her eyes at Yang Yi and said, "The leaves and branches of the trees in Snake Forest are tightly packed together, and even the moonlight wouldn't be able to permeate through at night. It would be even more dangerous to travel blindly in the darkness." Yang Yi rubbed his nose in embarrassment when he heard this. It was the first time that he'd come out to temper himself, and he wasn't as familiar with all of this as they were. However, he was still slightly embarrassed from being called stupid. When she saw Yang Ye's embarrassed appearance, Qing Hong started laughing without restraint. At this moment, she'd perceived that even though Yang Ye's strength was formidable, it was absolutely the first time he'd come to temper himself. So, if strength was disregarded, then Yang Yi was still extremely inexperienced in numerous aspects. Within the pitch-black and dense forest, an indistinct campfire was flickering in a quick and lively manner, and it brought strands of warmth and light to the deathly silent night. A few people sat cross-legged around the campfire. Yang Yi had his back to a large tree, and the branch in his hand frequently jolted towards the fire before him. From the conversations they had before this, Yang Yi had obtained a slightly better understanding of the three of them. All three of them were from a city called Green Mountain City, and it was the city closest to the Sword Sect. Manzi and Qinghong were actual siblings, and a few generations of their family before them were all mercenaries that relied on hunting dark beasts to provide for their family. As for Xiaohei, who hadn't spoken all along, it wasn't because he had a cold and indifferent bearing, and it was instead because Xiaohei was mute. "Brother Yang, are you really not a disciple of the Sword Sect?" At this moment, Manzi gazed at Yang Yi and asked with slight curiosity. When they heard Manzi, Qinghong and Xiaohei gazed at Yang Yi as well. Needlessly to say, that scene from before where Yang Yi slashed the twin-wing python apart with a single strike had truly shocked them. This sort of strength was absolutely not something an ordinary independent cultivator or the disciple of a small clan could attain. When they thought about how they'd asked Yang Yi to clean up the battlefield, their faces could help but burn slightly with embarrassment. "I can't be considered to be one for now, right?" Yang Yi stopped prodding the fire with the branch and looked at the three of them before he said, "What do all of you intend to do if you encounter that companion of yours, Xiao Yuan, in the future?" When they heard this name, all of their expressions became slightly unsightly. Qing Hong grunted coldly, while she didn't conceal the disdain on her face at all. She said, "This fellow didn't have pure intentions when he joined us. I originally thought that he was just slightly proud. Yet I never imagined that he would be so cowardly. He actually abandoned his companions to seek survival. I'll definitely shoot an arrow through his head when I see him again." Yang Yi shook his head and smiled as he gazed at Qinghong, who was angry. "Looks like that Xiao Yuan who fled by himself has really infuriated her." Manzi shook his head and sighed before he said, "Forget it. Let's just not have anything to do with such a person in the future." "Forget it," Qinghong said with slight anger. "Big brother, if it wasn't for Yang Yi, the three of us would have already perished beneath the attacks of the twin-wing python. How could we just forget this?" Xiaohei revealed a gloomy expression as he casually swung the dagger in his hand through the air, and he used this sort of method to display his displeasure towards Xiao Yuan. As he gazed at the two of them who were angry, Manzi shook his head and sighed before he said, "How could I desire to just forget it?" "Qinghong, you're right. If Brother Yang wasn't here when he fled in the midst of battle, then it would absolutely cause us to be annihilated. However, all of you are unaware that his older brother is a general in Green Mountain City. If we deal with him and news of it spreads, then we'll be unable to gain a foothold in Green Mountain City." When they heard this, Qinghong and Xiaohei's lips moved, yet they kept silent in the end. One had to at least be a First Heaven Realm expert in order to become a general at Green Mountain City, and such an expert wasn't someone they could go against. After a moment of silence, Qinghong grunted coldly and said, "We can't let it go just like that. After we return to Green Mountain City, we'll spread the news of him abandoning his companions. Let's see who'll allow him to join their group." Manzi and Xiaohei nodded when they heard this. If they didn't do anything at all, then they themselves would feel slightly aggrieved in their hearts. Just like Qinghong had said, so long as they spread the news, then Xiao Yuan would absolutely become the shame of the mercenary world in Green Mountain City. After all, fleeing in the midst of battle and abandoning one's companions were taboos of the mercenary world. Is Green Mountain City close to South Peace City? Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly asked this question. The three of them were stunned and didn't know why Yang Yi asked such a question. Manzi smiled and said, "Even though we've never gone to South Peace City, it should be close. Because we've sometimes encountered mercenaries from South Peace City that came to the Grand Myriad Mountains to hunt dark beasts." When he spoke up to hear and glanced at Yang Yi before he said, "Could it be that Brother Yang is from South Peace City?" Yang Yi nodded, and then he glanced at them while seeming to be lost in thought. When they noticed Yang Yi didn't feel like talking about it, the three of them were very sensible and didn't continue asking about it. After a short period of silence, Manzi seemed to feel as if something was off, and he stood up and glanced at the surroundings. The surroundings were completely pitch black and deathly silence. He frowned and thought for a moment before he said to Xiaohei, who sat silently at the side, "Xiaohei, let's sprinkle some Beast King droppings around us. It's too quiet, and something doesn't seem right." Xiaohei nodded when he heard this, and then the two of them walked towards the distance. Yang Yi was thinking about something when Qing Hong suddenly sat by his side. As she looked at Yang Yi, a wisp of an unusual glow flashed past Qing Hong's beautiful eyes. Yang Yi's face was slightly thin, his features were clear, and he had elegant black hair. Even though he couldn't be called a pretty boy, but he was still handsome as well. Of course, the key was Yang Yi's strength. Even though he was only a profounder at the 7th rank of the mortal realm, his strength could be described as terrifying. She had a slightly good impression of Yang Yi because Yang Yi's gaze wasn't so invasive like the gazes of others towards her. So she'd looked after Yang Yi all along the way. But when she saw Yang Yi stand in front of her like a god of battle and split the twin-wing python into two with a single strike, she knew that she had a trace of an unusual feeling towards this young man from that moment onwards. In the Southern Territory, the strong were always attractive. When he sensed the gaze of the beautiful woman by his side, Yang Yi turned his head to look at Qing Hong before he said, "What is it? Is there something on my face?" Qing Hong hurriedly withdrew her gaze while her face blushed slightly. Fortunately, it was deep into the night, so it was impossible to see clearly. After a short moment of silence, Qing Hong looked once more at Yang Yi and said, "Little brother, since your strength was so formidable, why didn't you resist when we asked you to clean up the battlefield or when Xiao Yuan ridiculed you repeatedly?" Yang Yi smiled and said, "It's better to keep a low profile. It's fine if one's strength is extraordinarily formidable, but if it's strength like me, then there are at least countless people with strengths that are more formidable than me within the Grand Myriad Mountains. If I keep a high profile, then I would be truly courting death." A year of living as a labor disciple allowed him to understand many principles. If one kept a high profile while not possessing any strength, then one would truly be courting death. Just like Manager Su and Du Xiu, if they kept a comparatively low profile on the labor peak, then they probably wouldn't have faced such consequences. A wisp of surprise flashed past Qing Hong's eyes. Living as a mercenary all year round allowed her to witness all sorts of geniuses, and almost all those strong geniuses were extremely arrogant and seemed as if they were deeply afraid that others wouldn't know of their strengths. On the other hand, this young man before her didn't have the arrogance of those geniuses at all, and he knew how to keep a low profile instead. This sort of mentality and maturity caused her to truly be slightly surprised. After engaging in small talk for a while, all the others besides Manzi had gone to rest. Even though the droppings of Beast Kings had been sprinkled in the surroundings, Manzi and the others didn't dare be careless at all, so they took turns to stand on guard. Deep in the night, the dense forest was covered in pitch-black darkness. Within this pitch-black and deathly silent forest, the campfire in front of Yang Yi was like a ghastly flame that seemed gloomy and slightly terrifying. Suddenly, a hiss resounded in the originally silent forest. It was only a single hiss at the beginning, but it seemed like over 100 in a short moment, and in a short moment later it seemed like the entire forest was filled with hissing. Yang Yi and the others had awoken when the first hiss had resounded, and Yang Yi was just about to stand up when Qing Hong, who lay by his side, had placed her hands on his hand before lightly shaking her head to him. When he noticed the serious expression Qing Hong had, Yang Yi looked towards Manzi and Xiaohei, who similarly had serious expressions, and when he saw them shake their heads towards him as well, he knew that he couldn't move at this moment. He immediately nodded slightly, and then stayed on the spot and silently watched the situation develop. For a time, the four of them were like statues. The hissing didn't end. Conversely, they grew more and more in number, and by relying on the weak illumination of the campfire, the few of them were able to notice numerous things wriggling about in the surroundings. Fortunately, the Beast King dropping were sprinkled in the surroundings, so those wriggling things didn't crawl towards them, and they wriggled around outside the ring of Beast King droppings. As they gazed at those wriggling things, Yang Yi and the others felt their scalps go slightly numb. Those things were naturally snakes. If there were only a few tens of snakes, then all of them wouldn't be fearful at all. Yet now there were at least over 10,000 snakes in the surroundings. Moreover, there were even some enormous pythons. At this moment, Yang Yi really wanted to ask the beauty by his side about what exactly was going on, but he didn't dare ask her. He was afraid that as soon as he did ask about it, then those snakes would charge over fearlessly. Even though his strength wasn't weak, if he was encircled by these snakes during the night, then even he would only have a slim chance of survival, especially when this was Snake Forest. He didn't know how many snakes there were in Snake Forest, but there definitely wouldn't be a small amount of them. When he thought about being encircled by a dense mass of countless snakes, Yang Ye's scalp felt slightly numb. It wasn't just Yang Yi who didn't understand what was going on. Even Manzi and the others didn't understand what was going on. In the past, they'd rested countless times in Snake Forest, but they'd never encountered such a situation. So, Manzi and the others felt both terrified and bewildered. More and more snakes arrived in the surroundings, and they ceaselessly moved over to encircle them. Snakes crawling over each other and forming pile after pile. Such a scene caused Manzi and the others to shudder with fear. Fortunately, those snakes didn't dare charge through the area encircled by Beast King droppings. Otherwise, all of them would definitely be dead. Qing Hong's hand pinched Yang Ye's hand with force, while her forehead was covered in cold sweat. In the end, she simply closed her eyes. However, the countless sounds of hissing still caused her to be unable to help but feel terrified. And then this terror transformed into the strength that kneaded and tortured Yang Ye's hand. Even with Yang Ye's skin that was hard like copper, he still felt pain from this. He turned his head to glance at Qing Hong, yet noticed her eyes were closed tightly, and her countenance was pale while her body trembled slightly. After that, he turned to look at Manzi and Xiao He, and he noticed both of them were in a similar state as well. Yang Yi frowned. He knew that, if this continued, then they would definitely go mad from the pressure they experienced under such a situation. Moreover, it was fine while they stayed still now. But once they moved, then those snakes in the surroundings would definitely surge fearlessly at them like tidewater. At that time, all of them would definitely be unable to escape death. Calm down. Calm down. When he thought about the scene of them being encircled and attacked by a myriad of snakes, Yang Yi forced himself to calm down. He knew that such a situation had definitely not occurred in the past. Otherwise, they would definitely not choose to rest in Snake Forest. So, even though it hadn't occurred in the past, it had occurred now, and the reason ought to be because they'd offended these snakes. We offended these snakes? When he thought up to here, Yang Ye's brows knit together tightly, and he made great efforts to think of the reason. Swoosh! Swoosh! Right at this moment, those snakes had finally disregarded the Beast King droppings, and they charged wave after wave towards Yang Yi and the others.